The conversation in Pittsburgh this week isn't just about the matchup against Buffalo in Week 13. It's bigger than that. It's about understanding who this Steelers team really is, what it can still become, and how much of that depends on getting the right players back on the field at exactly the right moment. And when you look at everything that's unfolded inside the Steelers facility over the last 48 hours, it's clear we're standing at the kind of moment that defines a season, that point where the team can either regain its balance or lose control completely. That's why every update coming out of this week's preparation hits differently, because every bit of news, every detail, ties directly into the question fans have been asking since the final whistle in Chicago. Can this team rise again, or was that the loss that finally broke the cycle? And before we jump in, go ahead and smash that like button if you're black and gold to the end. The first thing that jumps out from the latest information is the injury report, and honestly, it's hard to overstate how crucial this is. Aaron Rodgers is not just available, he practiced fully on Thursday and Friday. And if you watched Mason Rudolph struggle last week, particularly with anything beyond 10 air yards, you understand exactly why this matters. Rodgers may still have that cast on his wrist, and the Steelers may need to be careful about how much under-center work they ask of him, but even a limited Rodgers gives this team a completely different offensive ceiling. His quick feet, his calm in the pocket, and the way he processes the field fundamentally change what this offense can call and how defenses react. The Bills are one of the worst teams in the league against under-center run concepts, and if Rodgers can handle even part of that workload, Pittsburgh has a real chance to dictate tempo for the first time in weeks. And he's not the only one returning. DK Metcalf is back, Alex Highsmith is back, Joey Porter Jr. is back, Ben Skowronek is back. All of the names fans were genuinely sweating through the week, every one of them cleared to play. That alone shifts the feel around this matchup. Porter has been playing like a true number one corner for weeks now, and the idea of being without him against Josh Allen could have been catastrophic. Highsmith opposite TJ Watt is non-negotiable if you want the pass rush at full strength. Skowronek may not be a headline guy, but his blocking matters deeply in a game plan that screams run the ball from every angle. It's one of the first weeks in a while where the news has trended positively instead of peeling away the team's depth piece by piece. But of course, there's bad news mixed in with the good. Broderick Jones is officially on injured reserve and out at least a month, which forces Andrew Peat into the starting role at left tackle. It's a move that actually makes strategic sense given Peat's size and run-blocking strength, especially in a matchup where the ground game should be featured heavily. Calvin Anderson is waiting in the wings, but the coaching staff clearly values the downhill urgency Peat brings when the offense commits to the run. With how critical rhythm and identity are for this unit right now, having a tackle who can win on the ground might matter more than having one with better pass set consistency. And then there's the elevation of Asante Samuel Jr., which might be the most intriguing development of the entire week. He finally comes up from the practice squad, and the timing couldn't be more interesting. With Porter, Pierre, and Eccles all playing well lately, there's no obvious opening for Samuel to jump into the starting trio, but elevating him now ensures that no other team can swoop in and sign him, and it signals that the Steelers want him fully integrated. Maybe he plays special teams only. Maybe he sees a handful of snaps at outside corner if needed. Maybe he's simply being protected for future weeks. But the important part is that he's active, he's available, and he's now officially part of the equation. Buffalo, on the other hand, will be without both starting tackles, Dion Dawkins and Spencer Brown. And if you're TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, or Nick Herbig, that's the kind of matchup that keeps you smiling through warm-ups. Josh Allen was sacked 8 times last week. These are the exact conditions where Pittsburgh's defense historically takes over a game. And with the Bills' offense struggling for several games now, the opportunity is right there if the Steelers can force Allen to hold the ball and prevent the quick-hitting rhythm throws that burned them a week ago. Yet even with all of that, the conversation among fans is split between optimism and panic after the Bears' loss. Some are convinced the season is over, that the team is too inconsistent, that the coaching staff can't adjust. But when you look at the full body of work, the truth is more complicated. This is a team that beat the Patriots, currently the number 1 seed, on the road. They dominated the Colts, a division leader. They've shown flashes on both sides of the ball that look like a playoff team, even a dangerous one. The problem isn't talent, it's timing, it's consistency, it's putting the pieces together in the same game. And here's where Sunday matters. Because if the Steelers beat the Bills, and then face a Ravens team that just turned the ball over 5 times against Cincinnati, the entire complexion of the AFC North flips again. 2 wins, and Pittsburgh is 8-5 with the division nearly in hand. Everything this team wants is still right in front of them, but only if they break the cycle and start playing to the level they've shown they can reach. So after everything we've learned from this week's updates, everything shaping the narrative going into this matchup, the real question becomes this. Do you believe this is the moment the Steelers steady the season and start their push? Or is this another setup for the roller coaster swing we've seen all year? Starting with the energy of a team that knows exactly what's at stake, the continuation of this story isn't just about the players returning or the matchups on paper. It's about how the Steelers handle the emotional weight of a season that has given them every possible reason to fold, yet still leaves the door wide open for something bigger. And that's why this second part matters. Because when you look at the reality of this roster, the timing of the injuries, and the desperation that's starting to creep into the AFC playoff picture, Pittsburgh is walking into one of those rare crossroads games where identity becomes either sharpened or shattered. Everything we saw in the build-up to this game points toward a team that understands the urgency. Rodgers practicing fully for 2 straight days tells you everything about his mindset. He didn't come to Pittsburgh to sit behind a backup, and he certainly didn't come here to watch this team waste its defensive potential week after week. Metcalf returning gives the Steelers their only true physical mismatch on the outside, the one target who changes how defenses roll coverage. Highsmith returning restores balance to a pass rush that needs pressure from both edges to function at its peak. Joey Porter Jr. returning settles a secondary that has been punched in the mouth recently but still has the potential to be one of the more aggressive units in the AFC when aligned correctly. All of that creates momentum, but momentum only matters if it translates into execution, and that's where the internal pressure on this coaching staff becomes unavoidable. Last week wasn't just a loss. It was a schematic failure, a total breakdown in defensive spacing, a refusal to adjust to Caleb Williams' fast trigger passing game. And the big picture problem is that the inconsistencies on defense don't come from lack of talent. They come from lapses in communication and structure. That's why this week becomes such a critical moment. If the Steelers can slow Josh Allen, if they can force him off his first read and take advantage of Buffalo's depleted offensive line, then this defense can reclaim the tone they set earlier in the season. They've already shown they can dominate playoff-caliber teams at home. They've already shown they can overwhelm opponents when the pass rush wins early. This matchup aligns perfectly with their strengths, but only if they don't give Allen the easy stuff that Chicago lived on. Offensively, the unknown around the game plan is actually what makes this so compelling. Rodgers operating under center could unlock everything the Steelers want to be in the run game, but no one truly knows how much of that workload he can take with the cast on his wrist. If Pittsburgh goes shotgun heavy, they may lose some of that downhill force they need against the Bills' defense that has struggled to anchor. But if Rodgers can manage even a balanced mix of both, then you suddenly have an offense that looks the way it was designed to look. Metcalf threatening vertically, Skoranek sealing edges, Najee and Warren running with patience behind a left tackle who was chosen specifically for his physicality in matchups like this. Then you add the wild card, Asante Samuel Jr. He may not start. He may not play meaningful defensive snaps, but his presence on the active roster signals that the Steelers are preparing for depth challenges as the season pushes into December. And that matters more than people realize. This is the time of year when injuries pile up, matchups tighten, and teams rely on players who weren't even in the conversation back in September. Samuel is the type of mid-season addition who ends up deciding a game weeks later. Even if his role begins on special teams, simply having him available changes the structure of the defensive room. What's fascinating is how the conference has shifted just enough to allow Pittsburgh a clean path if they can find consistency. The Bills are wounded. The Ravens look vulnerable after coughing up 5 turnovers. The division isn't running away from them, and the Steelers have already proven they can respond after embarrassment. That's been the trademark of this season, the bounce back. A bad loss to the Bengals and Packers turned into a win over the league-leading Patriots. A collapse against the Chargers turned into a demolition of the Bengals. The problem isn't the response, it's the whiplash. This team has yet to show they can stack performances, one on top of the other, without sliding right back into the same mistakes. That's why this moment feels different, because if they win this game, if they follow it with a division battle against a Ravens team that just showed its own cracks, then the entire narrative around this Steelers season transforms instantly. The AFC North goes from chaotic to reachable. The playoff picture goes from stressful to promising. And for the first time since week 3, the Steelers could begin to look like a complete football team instead of a talented but unpredictable one. The pieces are there. The stakes are clear. The matchups tilt in Pittsburgh's favor. But the team still has to prove that the performance can match the potential when the lights hit. If the Steelers execute the way they are capable of executing, if Rodgers stabilizes the offense and the defense plays with structure instead of desperation, this could become the moment where the season shifts. So now I want to know what you think. Is this the game where Pittsburgh finally breaks the cycle and begins its push? Or do you still have doubts about whether this team can put 2 strong performances together when it matters most? And as this story pushes further into the heart of what this matchup means, you can feel the tension building around a team that has spent the entire season walking the line between promise and frustration. What makes this moment so compelling is that every major storyline converges at once: health returning, matchups tilting their way, the division tightening, and the team facing yet another test of resilience after a loss that shook the fan base. It's not just another week, it's the beginning of a stretch that will define whether this season ends in disappointment or becomes the turnaround fans have been waiting for since September. What stands out right now is how the Steelers' internal confidence contrasts sharply with the panic swirling among parts of the fan base. Inside the building, there's no sense of collapse. Players know this roster is too talented to drift. They've beaten top teams on the road. They've shown an ability to dominate defensively when the structure holds. They've flashed explosive potential offensively when Rodgers and Metcalf are both healthy and the run game is supported by physical blocking. The frustration hasn't come from a lack of ability, it's come from an inability to string performances together, to take the positives from one week and carry them into the next without regression. That inconsistency becomes the true opponent this week. Buffalo is dangerous, Buffalo has talent, and Buffalo has Josh Allen, but the Steelers have already handled quarterbacks of that caliber when their pass rush dictates the game early. What was missing last week wasn't pressure, it was discipline. Chicago lived on quick outs, simplified reads, and soft zones that allowed Caleb Williams to get the ball out before Walter Highsmith had any impact. That cannot repeat itself, and the coaching staff knows it. You don't elevate a player like Asante Samuel Jr., protect him on the active roster, and load your defensive meetings with adjustments if you're planning to repeat the same communication mistakes that cost you 31 points. What fans should pay attention to most on Sunday is not just whether the Steelers get pressure, it's how quickly Allen is forced to make decisions. If Pittsburgh takes away the easy throws, takes away the immediate flats, and forces him deeper into his progressions, then the Bills' depleted offensive line becomes an overwhelming disadvantage. This is where the injuries to Dawkins and Brown become so impactful. You cannot leave backup tackles on islands against Watt and Highsmith and expect clean pockets. And with Allen already coming off an 8-sack game, the psychological edge shifts firmly towards Pittsburgh's front seven if they can get to him early. Offensively, the storyline becomes even more intriguing. Rodgers gives the Steelers something they've missed for weeks: vertical credibility. Defenses have been sitting on short to intermediate routes, crowding the box, and daring the Steelers to throw over the top. When Rudolph couldn't threaten downfield, the entire offense constricted. Now, even with Rodgers managing that wrist injury, his presence alone forces Buffalo to defend more grass. Metcalf's return only amplifies that effect. Defensive backs can't press him without safety help, and when safeties start drifting deeper, the run lanes widen. That's where the decision to start Andrew Peat becomes strategic brilliance. He may not win every pass-blocking snap cleanly, but if Pittsburgh is truly leaning into a physical run-forward mentality this week, Peat is the exact anchor you want setting the tone at left tackle. And it's important to recognize that this offense has shown it can look legitimately dangerous when it has rhythm. The run game behind Najee and Jaylen Warren has had stretches where it controlled entire quarters. The problem has been sustaining those stretches. Rodgers returning doesn't just unlock vertical throws, it stabilizes early downs, creates tempo, and allows the Steelers to dictate instead of react. That's the difference between an offense that looks competitive and one that actually wins you football games in December. But beyond the strategy, beyond the injuries, beyond the matchups, the real theme emerging from this point in the season is urgency. Not panic, not chaos, urgency. The players are aware of the stakes. The staff is aware of the noise. The fan base is frustrated because the talent is obvious. And that's what makes this such a defining turning point. If the Steelers handle Buffalo, if they enter the Ravens game at full strength with renewed confidence, they shift from playoff hopeful to legitimate division threat instantly. It's not hyperbole. 2 wins right now would alter the entire AFC North landscape, but they have to earn it. They have to show they can execute clean football for 4 quarters. They have to show they can follow a strong performance with another one instead of swinging back into inconsistency. They have to prove that the ceiling of this roster isn't just theoretical, it's real, it's repeatable, and it's sustainable. So now that the full picture is clear, with all the stakes, all the matchups, and all the internal dynamics laid out, the final question becomes the one that defines the entire remainder of the season. Do you believe this Steelers team is finally ready to deliver consecutive statement performances when everything is on the line? And stepping even deeper into what this moment represents, you start to feel the weight of everything that is built up around this team, not just over the past few weeks, but over the past few years. Because this isn't simply about one game, or one injury report, or one stretch of inconsistent play. This is about a franchise that has been searching for a breakthrough since 2017, a fan base that's been waiting for a playoff win, and a roster that has been built piece by piece to finally push through the ceiling that has held them back for far too long. And now, with the season narrowing into its most important stretch, all of it comes down to execution, poise, and the ability to rise when the pressure is highest. What makes this specific moment so intriguing is that it feels like the Steelers are standing on the edge of two possible futures. In one direction, you can see a team that wakes up, tightens the details, and uses the return of Rodgers, Metcalf, Highsmith, Porter, and others to claw its way back into control of the AFC North. In the other direction is the familiar collapse, the same pattern the team fell into at the end of last season, the same frustration that has haunted Pittsburgh for years. And while no one inside the locker room is saying it publicly, everyone knows it. This stretch will define not only the season, but also the broader narrative of where the franchise is headed under this core. A team with T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, Joey Porter Jr., and Minkah Fitzpatrick should never be in defensive chaos. A team with Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf should never be incapable of stretching the field. A team with two productive running backs should never be stuck in neutral on the ground. But that's the story of the year so far, flashes of dominance, followed by breakdowns that make no sense for a roster with this much talent. That's why this Bills matchup carries such emotional weight. It's not just a game, it's the first true test of whether this team can stabilize when the season demands it. You beat the Bills, and suddenly the panic disappears. The Bears' loss becomes a footnote. The AFC North tightens. The momentum begins to swing back your way. You step into the Ravens game not as an underdog, but as a challenger ready to fight for the division. That's how quickly everything can shift in the NFL when a team seizes the moment. But to seize it, the Steelers have to show something they haven't shown all season. The ability to impose their identity instead of reacting to the opponents. The ability to play physical, disciplined football from the first drive to the last. The ability to trust the structure, trust the game plan, and trust each other. If they can do that, they will give themselves every chance not only to win this game, but to launch into the toughest part of the schedule with belief instead of desperation. And that's where the real heartbeat of this story lives. This team is not out of time yet, but it's getting close. They are not out of opportunities yet, but this is the biggest one. They are not out of the race, but they cannot afford another stumble. Everything is on the table. Everything is still within reach. Everything depends on whether they can take advantage of a moment that feels tailor-made to test their resolve. Now the question is simple, and it's the only one that matters as the Steelers head into this defining stretch. With the season hanging in the balance, do you believe this team is finally ready to play to its true potential, consistently, decisively, and when it matters most? And that's where the real heartbeat of this story lives. This team is not out of time yet, but it's getting close. They are not out of opportunities yet, but this is the biggest one. They are not out of the race, but they cannot afford another stumble. Everything is on the table. Everything is still within reach. Everything depends on whether they can take advantage of a moment that feels tailor-made to test their resolve. Now the question is simple, and it's the only one that matters as the Steelers head into this defining stretch. With the season hanging in the balance, do you believe this team